Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very special celebratory event for International Women's Day that was made possible by Diversity Resource International and Vandu Language Services. My name is Rozelle Bowerman, and I am an Associate Director of DRI. DRI is a community organization that is actively involved in helping local and disadvantaged communities, and their work in fighting inequalities and justice. Positive change is making real progress. Vandu Language Services is an interpreting, translations, and a bilingual advocacy service provider that is able to provide language support on demand, video and telephone interpreting services to Sussex and nationally. Now, anyone knows me knows I like a little bit of history. So a little bit about International Women's Day today. It grew out of the labour movement and has become a recognised annual event by the United Nations or the UN. The seeds of it was planted in 1908, and when 15,000 women marched through New York City demanding shorter working hours, better pay, and the right to vote. It was the Socialist Party of America who declared the first National Women's Day a year later. So International Women's Day was first organized and celebrated in 1911 in Austria, Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland. And this year we are technically celebrating the 110th International Women's Day. So the colors for the International Women's Day is purple, green, and white. Purple signifies justice and dignity, and green symbolizes hope, and white represents purity. I've tried my best. Is there an International Men's Day for all the men out there? Yes, there is. It's on the 19th of November. So before we start the event properly, I want to mention a couple of housekeeping and just tell you how the night will commence. I will encourage you to keep your microphone muted, please, whilst others are speaking, because the interference can cause some interference. But you're welcome to keep your camera on if you wish. Please use the chat feature to comment. This is a safe space, but just so feel free to share if you're comfortable in what you were sharing, but just be socially aware, please. This evening is very much about celebrating women in our lives and the impact that they've had. As our guest speakers share some of their stories or contributions of poems and achievements. This evening is also dedicated to renowned and recognised Guyanese British poet Grace Nichols. She's been the recipient of multiple awards, including the 1983 Commonwealth Poetry Prize for her first collection, I Is a Long Memoried Woman. Grace is going to provide poetry for us in a minute, but first, before I introduce Grace, I'd like to invite Zelma Player, who's a very long-standing friend of Grace, and she's about to do a friendship tribute to Grace. I've had the pleasure of meeting Zelma before. She's got 45 years of healthcare experience, and I met her as she was talking as she was a speaker on an event on healthcare inequalities in Sussex. Zelma was born and educated in St. Kitts in the Caribbean, and moved to the UK in 1970. Zelma, can I introduce, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you ever so much, Mebrak, for inviting me to contribute to this day. And thank you for my introduction, Ellen. I would like to start my tribute to Grace by quoting Thomas Aquinas. He says, "There is nothing on this earth more to be prized than true friendship." When asked to contribute to this day, I had no hesitation accepting this invitation to celebrate my friendship with Grace. As you heard earlier, I was born in St. Kitts in the West Indies, and I came to the UK in 1970. To train as a nurse. Like so many thousands of other nurses, we are actually invited to come to support the NHS, which we have done for many, many years. I lived and worked in London for 10 years before moving to Lewis, where in 1980, I first met Grace. So that was 40 years ago. We made instant connection. It was a joy to meet someone from my cultural background in this small town. Our friendship developed over many years, and we both recognized just how many core and personal values and beliefs we shared. Grace needs no introduction, as she's so well known for her inspirational work, both as a poet and writer. However, I would like to share with you some of Grace's qualities that make her such a special friend. Grace is not only a wonderful woman, wife, mother, grandmother, but she is an amazing friend, amazing Grace. And I'd like to actually just talk about her qualities by using the letters of her name, G-R-A-C-E. G, Grace by name, Grace by nature. And she's gentle, generous, and really gorgeous. R, she is resilient, she's reliable, she's respectful, a rare person. A, she's an achiever, she's adventurous, approachable, and affectionate. C, she is creative, she's caring, courteous, considerate, courageous, conscientious, committed, community orientated, and I could actually go on quite a bit more actually, but I won't at this point. And E, she is emancipated and always very encouraging. I feel very lucky to have met Grace when I did, and to be one of her many friends. I know she has many friends locally, nationally, internationally. She is a loyal and very special person, much loved by our family. My new granddaughter, born on the 25th of January this year, has been given the name Grace, which gives me great pride and pleasure. Thank you, Grace, for your love and friendship. Thank you.
Thank you, Zelma. Wow, what can I say? Amazing Grace. Grace, I can't do any better than that. My daughter's second name is also called Grace, and so I'm going to take a little bit of that, and I'm going to ask you, Grace, very graciously, if you could do some poetry for us, as promised. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Oh, Zelma, thank you so much for that wonderful tribute. You know, I'm so moved by it. It's so lovely. And I feel very honored this evening to, you know, to be celebrated in this way. But there are so many wonderful women out there, and in Lewis in particular. So before I begin, I'd like to say a few words before reading a couple of short poems. On this special International Women's Day occasion, I'd like to just touch on a few of the women in Lewis, which is a fairly small town, who've inspired me greatly over the years. So, and I'd like to thank the DRI community and all those who were involved in putting on this very special occasion. So a big thank you to doing this event. So first of all, I'd like to thank Mebrak for her important, very important contributions to diversity and inclusiveness, not only in Lewis, but in other communities. Zelma herself, who's made a great contribution to the nursing profession. You've got Professor Ya, who is a great mind. Sonia Baski, who is a fount of knowledge, a lecturer who has done so much. So many people, Razia and Ava, who've contributed to to, you know, the celebration and you know, the importance of women's creativity and contribution. So I like to begin by saying that writing is my way of participating in the world and of helping to keep the human spirit alive, including my own spirit. I feel that my writing, my poems, are much wiser than me. They express to me my deepest self, my truest self. In the act of writing, you're the sum total of all that you are, you know, all your influences, your experiences, your feelings, your imagination, everything is included in the act of writing. Coming from Guyana, which is part of the Caribbean, I have two rich language traditions. We have Creole, which is the everyday language of the people of the Caribbean, and it's mostly made up of the oral tradition of proverbs, folk songs, rhymes, and rhythms. And then you have the English language, which is the official language. Guyana was was a British colony. So I grew up in a situation where both languages were interchangeable and operating. And as a writer, it's that battle with language that I love, of trying to create a new language, so to speak, out of the two. And I'm a very multicultural kind of person. And when you're writing, your imagination is wide open, and writing is all about transformation. I'd like to touch briefly on my first book of poems, I Is a Long-Memoried Woman, which was published nearly 40 years ago. And it was my first book. And it's about a woman, an African woman, uprooted as a slave and taken to the Caribbean. And it traces that journey. But the woman at the end of that book of poems still manages to keep her humanity alive, her human spirit, and to emerge with a sense of her own identity. And the epilogue that ended the whole book is this. It says, I have crossed an ocean. I have lost my tongue. From the root of the old one, a new one has sprung. I wrote those words for my long-memoried woman all those years ago. Now that I've been living in England for the last 40 years, just over 40 years, I sometimes think that those words also partly apply to me. For I have also crossed an ocean, and from the root of my old Creole tongue, my vivid Caribbean tongue, it has blended with the richness of English. So you could say a new one has sprung. I've acquired a wider sense of my own identity. Britain and the Sussex landscape are now also a part of me, and that affects the way I write and the way I express myself also. To mark International Women's Day, I'd like to read two poems. The first was written for my mother a long time ago. I wrote it a few years after she died, when I was 21 years old. And my mother was a lovely, warm, nurturing kind of person. And in the poem, I'm trying to tell her this. And I'd like to dedicate that poem to all mothers, because we all have mothers. And I've called it Praise Song for my mother. You were water to me, deep and bold and fathoming. You were moon's eye to me, pull and grained and mantling. You were sunrise to me, rise and warm and streaming. You were the fish's red gill to me, the flame tree spread to me. the crab's leg, the fried plantain smell, replenishing, replenishing. Go to your wide futures, you said. So that's praise song for my mother. And I like to end on a more playful note. I wrote this poem a few years after coming to England, and it's more of a playful look at migration, because I was being asked from time to time if I intended going back home to Guyana, or wanted to stay on in England. And so this poem came as a kind of reply to that. And in it, I'm blending both my tongues that I spoke about, both Caribbean English and English. So both Creole and English. And it's called Wherever I Hang. I leave my people, my land, my home. For reasons I'm not too sure. I forsake the sun and the hummingbird splendor, had big rats in the floorboard. So I pick up my new world self and come to this place called England. At first, I feeling like I in dream. The misty grayness, a touching the walls to see if they're real. They solid to the seam. And the people pouring from the underground system like beans. And when I look up to the sky, I see Lord Nelson, high, too high to lie. And it's so, I sending home photos of myself among the pigeons and the snow. And it's so, I warding off the cold. And it's so, little by little, I begin to change my calypso ways. Never visiting nobody before giving them clear warning and waiting my turn in queue. Now, after all this time, I get accustomed to the English life. But I still miss back home side. To tell you the truth, I don't know really where I belong. Yes, divided to the ocean, divided to the bone. Wherever I hang my knickers, that's my home. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thanks again, Mebrak and everyone, for celebrating me. Well, I see every one of us as women being celebrated, but because of, you've specially decided this evening to give me a little more of a celebration, let's say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. Amazing, amazing, Grace. There's so much I could relate to what you were saying tonight. In fact, all of it I could relate to. I like that you called yourself a multicultural woman who's crossed the ocean, and I really appreciated your poem about mothers. I think we underestimate the value of mothers, and it spoke to me personally because of my mother not being around either. And I think there's quite a few women here tonight who are in the situation where we don't have our mums and we've crossed the oceans and we don't know where we belong. So thank you very much for sharing that. Our next speaker I'd like to introduce is Stephanie Pryor. Stephanie describes herself as a creative who enjoys exploring new opportunities and building strong business relationships. Stephanie was the first Black woman to attain a seat at the Brighton and Hove Council, which is still very significant in today's society. And with her position, she helps to represent the Black and minority ethnic community in Brighton. She's former Miss Jamaica and former Miss Sussex. And Stephanie, I can see why. So welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you so much. My name is Stephanie Pryor. By trade, I'm a business development and marketing manager for an international law firm based in Brighton. And it's funny because this time last year, on behalf of work, I was organising my own event for International Women's Day. And it was very popular at the time, a year before, when pitching it to my bosses. They weren't sure about International Women's Day. It was yet to be of interest, I suppose, commercially. But nevertheless, last year we sold 200 tickets just before lockdown came into effect. And I remember sitting in the audience listening to a panel of Sussex's leading women in business. And I remember listening to their experiences and their perspectives. And it made me question a lot about my own experiences and whether I thought the challenges I had experienced as a woman in business were a reflection of my gender, my race, or both. And I also remember looking at the panelists thinking, I wonder if at some point I'll be speaking at an event like this and whether what I would say would be relatable, because even though I organised the event, there was few women of colour in the room. I was a minority at my own event. So it raised lots of questions in my head, and I must thank DRI for inviting me here today and bringing us all together to celebrate International Women's Day. Now, in addition to my job, I'm also a standing invitee for Brighton and Hove City Council, and I sit on the TEC committee. TEC stands for Tourism, Equality, Culture and Community. And this committee deals with a range of issues from the environment, business, the health and well-being of our community, charity, and many other factors. Now, my role was established because last year, Brighton and Hove City Council made a pledge to become an anti-racist city. And this was prompted by 12,000 people taking to the streets of Brighton and Hove to show their support and protest for the Black Lives Matter movement. And upon reflection, it was highlighted that the council was an all-white council and it needed to be more representative of the city it represents. So I am the first Black woman of African Caribbean heritage to have a seat on a committee for Brighton and Hove City Council, which sounds so weird and alien to say in this modern day and age, but nevertheless, it's a small yet significant step in the right direction. I think it's good that the council are exploring their initiative internally as well as externally, and I hope it encourages other councils in Sussex and institutions to follow suit too. Now, if we look at Brighton and Hove as a city, it is modern and forward-thinking. We can see this from our choice of local MPs, our Green-led council, or even by the fact that we hold and host one of the most successful and largest Pride events in Europe. However, if we explore equality and diversity, there is evidence to suggest that there are big gaps. And arguably, the city has been quiet to acknowledge and celebrate its rich yet deep cultural history. Now, just to quickly run through some of Brighton and Hove City Council's pledge, it includes decolonialising the curriculum, enhancing business and eventing opportunities, revising language use such as BME, internal staff training, and working better with the local community to achieve and work on this strategy and more. Now, it's a big pledge and a big challenge, but nevertheless, I do believe it's possible. If we think of the city as a canvas, there are many blanks, and these blanks provide the opportunity to lead, be innovative and creative. I also think it's important as women in business and as a community, we look out for each other and we work together to hold institutions like the council accountable in order to achieve the changes that we wish to see in our society. Now, I'm really passionate about representation and marketing too. And one of the reasons that I love marketing is it's a powerful communications tool that can be used to create or influence perceptions and values. Throughout history, racism has operated as a business and it's been marketed to us. And the marketing of racism has justified the exploitation and division of people on a global scale. If we are to challenge common stereotypes that support the over-policing of young Black men or a lack of representation in leadership, or even common ideologies that dictate to us what is beautiful or what is intelligent, we need to explore where these ideologies came from and how do we go about changing the narrative. Now, I think representation is key. After all, they say seeing is believing. And what did you see growing up? I grew up in Littlehampton, aka LA Massive. My grandma, I believe, was the first Black woman to reside in the town in the 1980s, and my family were the first Black family there. And that came with its complexities. My mum and her sister were the only Black kids throughout school. They got bullied badly. And even with myself, I was the only Black girl up until secondary school. And I did experience a lot of racism, and I had to develop a strong character to survive in that environment. And by the time I was a teenager, in many ways, I was misunderstood, overlooked, and I was failing in many areas, including education. I came out of school at 16 with just 2 GCSEs above C grade. Later that year, I was working with the YMCA in Hove, and we were working on a charity trip to go to Gambia. So we fundraised and we took lots of resources out, and it was in collaboration with the YMCA Gambia. And on the second to last day, we had a history trip, and we went to Kunta Kinte's island, and I met his family. I went to the slave museum there and explored the history. And I was aware of Roots. It's actually one of my favorite films. And I was aware of my own history. But my anger turned to sadness. And all I could think of when I was at that museum and I was overlooking a draft of a slave ship was that my family came from Africa, and they were taken from Africa to Jamaica. And for years they fought for their freedom. And in 1960, my great-grandma decided that she was going to leave Jamaica and leave her husband and her children to start a better life in the UK with the intention of bringing her children over. And her husband was against it, but nevertheless, in years to come, he followed, and so did her children. And that move was so significant, and it was so important, and it was a big sacrifice for her. And all I could think about was I wasn't fulfilling my legacy, regardless of whose fault that was. I wasn't doing the best by myself and being the best version of myself. So I came back to the UK with a different perspective, and I changed my own narrative. I got my qualifications. Within 2.5 years, I was at university. I got work experience at the BBC after 6 applications. They must have got bored of hearing from me. And 2 years after that, I competed for Miss Sussex, and I was one of 2 women of colour in the competition. And I actually ended up winning and becoming the first Black woman to represent Sussex and compete in Miss England. At the time, Miss England and Miss Universe Great Britain, which were the leading pageants in the UK and internationally, neither had crowned a Black woman, which I found was just fascinating. So I dedicated 5 years to campaigning on these platforms to promote that Black is beautiful. And it was hard. It was hard pitching to judges who didn't understand me or the significance of what I was trying to achieve at the time. And unfortunately, I didn't achieve the national wins. And I remember leaving pageantry feeling rather sad, like a failure. And as a loser, my story wouldn't really be told. It didn't matter. But I was wrong, because within months I had women contacting me for advice on how to build their confidence. I had women contacting me with regards to what platform they should consider in building their confidence, or modelling opportunities and various other platforms. I had women saying to me how important it was and inspiring to see my face in a predominantly white environment, and how much I stood out and how important it was for them to see representation on those platforms, regardless of whether they followed them or not. And one of the most significant conversations I had was actually with a friend. Her mixed race daughter, she said to me, admired me, and every time she saw me on Facebook, she would, love my photos of me in the competitions, etc. And she said to me, do you know who you remind my daughter of? And I said, who? And she said, Barbie. And it just made me laugh. And we had a joke about it, but to this day, I haven't actually told my friend how significant it was that she said that to me, because when I was a child, Barbie represented perfection, and she wasn't Black, but to this young mixed race girl, she could be. And this commercial ideology was within her reach, and it represented people that she looked up to, which I just thought was fascinating. What I would like to say, what I'm trying to highlight, I suppose, is that we have the power to change narratives, and small changes create ripple effects within our community that allow others to dream bigger and aim higher. I want to conclude by just basically saying, everything is everything. What's for you is for you, and what's for me is for me. So rise to every opportunity, don't hold back. Rise to the occasion, enjoy the journey, and if like me, you end up failing more times than you win, don't give up. As Oprah Winfrey once said, think like a queen. A queen is not afraid to fail, for failure is a stepping stone to greatness. Thank you very much for listening to me, ladies. Happy International Women's Day, and keep rising. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was amazing. I think we have a lot in common. I can't wait to sit down and have a cup of coffee with you. I think we'll have a lot to chat about. We've got marketing in common anyway, but I like, you know, your story you're telling is still inspirational, and you're not beaten. You know, you're a strong woman and you come across as a strong woman, and on a day like today, International Women's Day, it's still, you know, it's inspirational. So thank you for sharing your story with us. That's great. Thank you very much. My next speaker that I'd like to introduce is Mebrak Ghebreweldi. I think most people know Mebrak because her reputation precedes her. She's the CEO of Vandu International, as well as DRI, and a director of DRI. But Mebrak I know personally, and she's a massive inspiration to me. She's a formidable lady. She's achieved so much in her life personally and in the business world, but she's incredibly humble. And sometimes when I speak to her, I get a glimpse of her achievements, but it's not something she talks about very much. So I'm really looking forward to her sharing her story, because Mebrak truly is an international woman with life experience. Mebrak?
Thank you, Rozelle. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much for this flattering introduction. And thank you everybody for coming tonight to celebrate the most important day to me personally, the International Women's Day. It's about solidarity of women. And I think in particular, the solidarity of women, to me, you know, I cannot say enough how important it was in this lockdown year, 2020 and now. I think without the solidarity of my women friends, I don't know how I would have survived this lockdown, because I'm not a person that can be locked down. You know, I love my social friends. I love going to a coffee shop and have chat. So thank you very much, everybody, for being friends, sisters, you know, from all walks of life, any language, any culture. I'm very much interested in International Women's Day because I came from Eritrea. Eritrea is a small country by the Red Sea in the Horn of Africa. It was colonized by the Ottomans from 1516 for about 350 years, and followed by the Italians, came in the end of 18th century until the Second World War. And when Mussolini was defeated by the Allied forces, and the British came as a caretaker for Eritrea to decide what they want to do with Eritrea for 12 years. And they have decided that Eritrea has to be federated with Ethiopia, which was a very wrong thing to do because it caused us fighting each other for 30 years. So after 30 years of looking for independence, the Eritrean people won independence in 1991. And that's where it starts my respect for my fellow women, because 30% of the freedom movement were women in Eritrea. I will share my screen so that you know what am I talking about. So yeah, so you can see while I'm talking. I don't know if it's going as, yeah. So this is what we look like. I am one of them, joined the freedom movement when I was between 15, 16, and I was 8th grade. So I trained to be a radio Morse code operator in the front line. And some of us work as doctors, you know, mechanics, people that work in drivers, and of course, you know, frontline, you know, fighters. We went to join the fighting for freedom, independence. But what we gained is we gained the equality, the equal rights of women, simply because we earned that. We earned that by fighting, you know, dying and wound beside of men. So, you know, while the history of International Women's Day start in the late, you know, 18th century, you know, probably, you know, 1848 in the United States, and follow the 1910, 1911, and 1909. Until 1977, when 8th of March was declared as International Women's Day. The Eritreans women fought for their freedom and equality by picking the gun, if necessary, or, you know, being in the front line equal to men. So we came back to the country, to the society where most of it is traditional society, with all this equality, with all this furious kind of attitude of women. And, you know, we have acquired equal pay, land for women. If she wants to go back to her family's home, now she's allowed to have a land. The Muslim women, if their husband, you know, were left them, they would go with nothing. After this independence, you know, it's the woman's rights to have half in whatever, you know, rights that she has, and man cannot just tell whether he's a Muslim or not. They can't tell her that you've been disposed, now you can go away. So it is an equality that earned. I don't mean by all means that the Eritrean woman has achieved their equal rights completely. I think there is a lot to struggle yet. But at least by fighting for independence, we gain our independence in fair share in the society, which we didn't have it before. But we also gone beyond the religious and ethnicity differences. You know, men and women from Muslim communities and Christian, you know, communities could get married if they can die side by side, you know, marriage of two, you know, people in love, you know. So the whole feudalist kind of culture was broken, you know, in going through this, independence time. And, you know, we are now fighting not to go back to this, you know, very unequal society. So this is how I grow up. This is how, you know, I brought my probably passion to make sure that International Women's Day in Sussex is celebrated. So I don't know that a country does not celebrate, you know, International Women's Day as a public holiday. So when I came to East Sussex, I haven't seen anything like that. You can see something, you can hear anything in the radio or something, and I couldn't believe that. This is Europe. This is what we used to believe, that it's high advance, and the women's right and the women's solidarity is at the peak. So I started to celebrate that with some friends in Eastbourne, because, you know, DRI was much more active in Eastbourne and Hastings. So that's how it started, probably about 15 years ago, and we celebrated it in a very small kind of area and a small space by inviting international women from all walks to celebrate and talk about, the achievements and the challenges ahead of us women. Personally, I just don't understand, what we're talking about is we're talking about our children, our boys who become leaders. Where is it going wrong that those young boys, I am a mother of two myself, when they become leaders, we become unequal. It's just so unfair and, a kind of bizarre when you think about it. What is this inequality between women and men that we are 51%, 50 at least, and we give birth to girls and boys, but at some point we become unequal. And I think it has to stop. It has to stop, and I feel most of the problem globally in the internationally is because while we lead at the community level, while we hold in the whole society in any country, whether it's in Africa or in the developed country, at the community level, women are holding society together. But you go up and up, there is no woman. And I think that is the problem with the global problems. Yeah, you can correct me and I might be, unreasonable, but I think I believe in that. I believe that, the top leaders is not balanced. It's not balanced in diversity. It's not balanced in gender. And we having all this problem internationally. And I think we need to deal with that. So DRI is here. We try to make difference. We try to make impact. If anyone wants to support DRI in any way, please, come and join us. It's a social enterprise. We are trying to find a solution because we've had enough of talking about problems. I am in this country for 29 years. And all, year after year is about disparity. Year after year is about the inequality, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's, it's religion. It's been of that history. And I think we need to find a solution now. We need to find a solution. And I think if there is, what the COVID-19 did is, I think it helps us to soul search individually, organizationally, and systematically. And I think the women's solidarity is so important. And we need to be in every place. We need to encourage our boys and our girls to have this equality, because those boys trying to dominate the decision-making are our boys as well. So we need to go back and ask ourselves, what are we doing with these boys that when they go up and they go up and up, they become unequal with their sisters? So I'll leave you with that question. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak this evening, which is very important. So happy International Women's Day for all.
Thank you, Mebrak. Mebrak, whenever you speak, you have a tendency to make people listen. And really, there's so much I admire with you, and I have a pleasure of working with Mebrak quite closely. And she just inspires all the time. Whatever comes out of your mouth, it just fires you up. It reminds me a little bit about, you make me think about a road, there are people that carve out roads for others. And that's how I see you, and a lot of women in your generation, you carve roads out for us, the rest of the generation and the younger generations and my children and my children's children, and just makes it easier for us to walk in those roads. And hopefully one day there will be highways, we won't be struggling as much, but we'll create highways that will make it easier every time somebody walks on that road, and makes it a little bit wider and a little bit wider. Anyway, so I would like to introduce the next speaker, which is Shaznaz Biggs, is next to contribute and to share. She's a PhD student at the University of Brighton. Her academic background is social sciences and enterprise, and Naz has always been interested in how aspects of our external identities, such as our skin color and our hair, etc., contribute to our sense of self. From 2013 to 2015, she led a small project called the Reclamation of the Curl, where she supported young Black and ethnic minority groups, women, to embrace their natural hair and transition from using hair straightening products. I'm really looking forward to what you have to say, Naz. So I'll hand over to you.
Hi, everyone. Can I share my screen? Can you hear me?
Yeah, of course you can.
It says it's disabled.
Oh, just give
You
me
need to make her a co-host, I think.
Just a moment, I'll do that now, Naz.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak, and thank you so much to the speakers that have spoken before. Very powerful. It's a pleasure to be here.
You should be able to do it now.
Can everyone see this?
We can see your screen, Naz. Go ahead.
Hi, yes, my name's Naz, and today I'm going to talk about my personal journey that I went through in accepting my natural hair. It was a process that I call the reclamation of the curl, and I'm going to speak about going natural. Now, going natural, don't know if you ever heard of the term before. It means when you embrace the way your hair grows out of your scalp and using low manipulation techniques to maintain that. There are different varying degrees, but essentially it's not using chemical relaxers to straighten your hair. So for me, that was the process of actually accepting my hair as it grew and falling in love with my curls. So my journey to going natural actually began at university. I was going through a bit of an identity crisis. I felt deeply uncomfortable and trapped by my hair. I started to feel that my hair started to equal my self-worth. I was straightening it a lot, and I was wearing a lot of weaves, and I started to notice that my hair was breaking and being damaged. So upon speaking to other Black and mixed race young people and women who are experiencing similar things, I decided to go on a journey, and that journey started with a lot of reflection for me. So I was actually born with straight hair, and that changed as I got older. This was really interesting. As you can see in my baby pictures, my mum used to actually have to finger coil my hair because people would make derogatory comments about, oh, who's the father? Because my hair was straight. So she used to actually physically curl my hair. As I got older and my hair began to grow, people would make comments as it got kinkier and curlier and say that it was unruly or nappy or trashy. And I started to internalize those negative connotations with my hair. My mum, my grandmother and my mother would always tell me that having straighter hair or more well-kept hair was important because it signified status. But upon speaking with my grandmother, I realized that this was a form of survival. She came here in the 1960s and she found it very difficult to be accepted in this community of England. She was in London, and she was often ridiculed for her natural hair. So she would wear it in curls and she would straighten it and press it. Now, there's a common practice in the Black community to straighten your hair with something called a hot comb. Anyone experiencing the hot comb experience might actually be traumatized because you have a metal device that gets heated on a gas cooker, and as it cools down, it is used to straighten the hair. But what this does is it made me feel as though my natural hair wasn't as beautiful. But I understood that a lot of other young Black girls was going through the same experience. And here's in the image on the right, there's actually a meme where someone says, growing up Black, do I ever have to explain the pain and torture? Because it's a common narrative that we've all experienced. I started to do more research, and I started to see that this was actually a common thing coming throughout the Black community. There was an equation of good hair, which meant your hair had to be looser curls and wavier in texture. And that was equated with having a certain privilege being desired and accepted. But that was because in wider society, there was discrimination. People with curlier hair were not given jobs, or they were actually told in interviews that you weren't able to have the job if your hair was worn in a certain way. I had this experience as well in school, where I was told that I wasn't allowed to have braids, I wasn't allowed to have my hair natural and out. But also there was a lack of representation. I remember going into the hair shops and trying to get hair products for my curly hair. And most of them were related to having straight hair. And they had words such as smooth and silky that I didn't really associate with having my own curly, kinky hair. So this actually connects to a wider historical narrative. When I started to do my research, I started to realize that hair texture is actually tied to Blackness and is a marker of racial identity. And it has been that way for centuries. I learned that texturism, which talks about different textures of the hair, different curl patterns, and what that meant in society, was actually connected to colorism and privileges that lighter slaves were given, where they were allowed to work indoors, where darker slaves with thicker textured hair had to work outdoors. And over time, that had become something that affected the Black community and Black women. As I mentioned with my grandmother, and she used to wear her hair straight and curled in a certain way, I learned that Black people felt compelled to smoothen their hair texture to fit in. It was actually a form of camouflage and conformity to be accepted in societies. I also learned that in the 60s and 70s, there was a pushback against that. And natural hair, as we know as the afro, was actually seen as a bold political statement. My mum, which is the two images in the corner of the left and right, she began to wear her hair in afro, which was really interesting because my mum's hair was a lot looser texture. So she used to back comb her hair to try and have her hair be raised up and stand like an afro. But for her, the afro represented the acceptance of her Blackness. So in 2011, I reclaimed my curl and I joined the natural hair movement. I stopped straightening my hair. I researched how to care for my hair on YouTube, and I started to make my own hair products. I learned about the different types of curls that exist on one head and what types of techniques and manipulations would actually support my hair grow a lot longer and not be damaged. I became the vice president of something called the Fresh Hair Society at university, where it was, me and other young Black girls got together to discuss these topics and how much it impacted us as a group. We watched the documentary Good Hair that was put on by, set up by Chris Rock, and we discussed the themes that came to that project. And we challenged what good hair meant. And I was inspired to set up my own project in 2013 to support other young Black women who were going through this journey that was so connected to that identity, except their natural curl pattern and how it grew out of their hair. But Black women's experience of having natural hair is something that has been spoken about quite a lot. And actually, even in popular culture, there's a song there called I Am Not My Hair by India Arie, and she actually mentions that good hair, bad hair divide, where she says, good hair means curls and waves, no. Bad hair means you look like a slave, no. And that is the representation that a lot of young Black women face today and beforehand. Don't Touch My Hair by Solange Knowles, that came out more recently, she talks about how, and it represents how young Black women, even when they do wear their hair natural, they can be objectified. People think that it's their right and entitlement to touch their hair without permission, and can actually be something that Black women can be quite conscious of. Ultimately, I think that my hair should be my choice, but this isn't a simple choice. There are so many complex narratives, histories, and cultural and political aspects that form part of that decision. Every day that I wear my hair natural, sometimes I have to take that on. I have been questioned in the street, at work, and had comments made towards my hair that had made me question my identity. But I have to make that acceptance every single day. I started to understand that the family and community ideas of what good hair was is actually grounded in years and years of oppression, stigma, and conformity, which is still felt today. For example, in 2016, I don't know if anyone heard the story of Zelma Player in South Africa, where she was told she had to fix her hair because it wasn't part of the school uniform. Imagine that, how her hair grew out of her head. She was told to fix it because it wasn't part of school uniform. And this is a common narrative that a lot of young Black children face around the world. In 2019, Project Embrace actually had a campaign called Rip Up the Dress Code, because there was a lot of corporate young Black people who were told that they couldn't wear their hair natural because it was seen as unprofessional. So there's been a campaign that's been challenging those narratives. Hair is an important and sometimes overlooked part of identity, but it can reveal a lot about cultural, political, and societal narratives. And I think that's something that is good to reflect on. What sorts of perceptions and narratives can different types of hair reveal? Status, religious fables, oppression, privilege, health, disease. I think it's an important thing when you're reflecting on your own journeys and your own personal identities to reflect on aspects of hair. And here's one thing that you can do. Think of an important memory or story, fiction or non-fiction, that relates to hair. Why does this memory or story resonate with you? What can be celebrated about your hair memory or story? And how does this story and memory connect with wider narratives? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Naz. Thank you very much. I found that very, very interesting. My mum always used to say, your hair is your crown. If you go out looking like a, bad, you won't be a princess. She used to say that. When I was living in Malaysia, there was a lot of Asians and they all had straight hair. And I remember once somebody touched my hair and said, this would make a nice pillow. And, it's comments like that. But I think for women in particularly, we're quite, women in general, we're quite tough on ourselves as well as other people on us. And we're always striving to be better and more perfect. And if it's not your hair, it's you're not thin enough, you're not tall enough, your boobs are not big enough. And I've learned now from traveling all over the world that I'm never going to fit in wherever I go, because wherever I am, I'm not the right type of woman or the right type of person. So just to sort of reflect on what you were saying, I think I commend you, and I think it's great that you can share your story and encourage us. And I agree with you. We need to accept ourselves, and other people need to accept ourselves for who we are as well. Okay. So thanks very much, Naz.
Thank you.
The next speaker I'd like to introduce is Grace Toby. Grace leads a charity called the Open Minds Project, and she educates everyone about the lives of Black people. She's driven by passion to see people change through knowledge. The role books played in her upbringing is now center stage. She firmly believes that when a woman has a strong sense of identity, it determines how they approach and respond to life. One of Grace's mantra in life experiences are to share stories with others, and I couldn't agree more with you, Grace. So welcome.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Just to check. Great.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And it's a real privilege to be here and to share my story with everyone. I will start from saying I was born in Nigeria, and I grew up there until 2007, when I moved to England. So I grew up and spent most of my adult life, young adult life, in Nigeria. And when I was told to share a story, I knew that I couldn't share my story without talking about my mom. So I'm the last of 4 children, and I was brought up by my mom single-handedly. In Nigeria, she brought all 4 of us up through to university. And in a society where women have lower rights and are regarded as less equal to men, that was a big deal for me, and it significantly impacted on my life. So my mom is my hero because she demonstrated to me that hard work is very important. And so even when I heard Grace Nichols talk about the poem she dedicated to her mom, that was very emotional for me as well, and it's one of my favorite as well. My mom taught me a lot of things, but she also taught me, she always said something to me as a child. She always told me, said a word, which is Marunwegi. So it's in Igbo, it's an Igbo language, it's in Igbo, which is one of the major languages in Nigeria. and it literally means know yourself. And as a child, I never quite understood it, because I always thought, oh, what does this mean? But as I grew up, I began to realize that she always told me those things because she wanted me to be confident in who I was. So I remember the first time she told me that was when I was heading off to boarding school as a 9-year-old child. And she said, Maron Wiggy. And I thought, why is she asking me to know myself? What does this mean? You know. But as I grew older, I began to see that that word, know yourself, meant a lot of things. So as a child, it meant comport yourself in public. Act as a child, act as someone who's got home training, who's got values. And as a teenager, it meant know yourself, know the values you've been taught and brought up with, making decisions, and taking responsibility for those decisions. As I became a teenager, it began to mean other things to me. It began to mean know yourself, know your worth, know your abilities, know your giftings, know your beauty, know your capabilities. Know that there's no ceiling for you unless you pick one for yourself. And I remember that in university, lots of people just assumed that I was from a very privileged home, and that I was extremely intelligent when I was just an average person. But it was because I was afraid of no one. And I was afraid of no boundaries. I saw myself as living life without any boundaries. And so when I came to England, for the first time, I was confronted with situations where I wasn't, I felt limited, I felt restricted. And so I began to ask myself, I had to draw out from that foundation that my mom had set for me, where she said, know yourself. So I came across situations where people felt I spoke funny, where people felt, oh, she's a chartered accountant, where did she get her chartership from? The institute in Nigeria. Okay. Can you really trust her? Does she know what she's saying? You know, and all those questions about my abilities. Now, being a chartered accountant, being an accountant, I worked in a very corporate environment, where the minute you spoke, you were immediately judged. And I had an accent. Yes, I spoke English in Nigeria, but when I came here and I started speaking English here, it sounded different. All of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I wasn't the majority. I was the minority, and I had been labeled in one way or the other. And so, struggling with this, I managed to overcome. I overcame because I remembered who I was. I addressed those challenges because I remembered who I was. And so now I'm a mom of 3 children. And the first question I ask myself is, do they know who they are? Can they stand tall in whatever situation life throws at them? And in doing this, I began to tell my children the stories of their heritage, primarily because they will learn about their English heritage in school, but will they learn about their Nigerian heritage? They will probably face more challenges about who they are here because they are the minority. And today I still talk to my children and say, Maron Wegi, and sometimes they laugh and they chuckle because they don't really understand what it means. But my hope is that they will come to know who they are indeed. They will grow to be confident of their worth, their values, their gifts, their challenges, and that they'll realize that there are no restrictions for them as well. And this was one of the reasons why I started the charity, the Open Minds Project, because I knew it was important for everyone to feel represented, for people to tell their stories, especially women. And I think in the environment I work in, the corporate environment, competition is a killer. And most times women see themselves in competition with each other. And I think the few times I've honestly spoken to a female colleague and said, do you know what? It's actually okay for you to be struggling with something, and to tell them it's okay to struggle and then to overcome. It just feels like the burden they've been carrying has been lifted off their shoulder. And so I feel that it's important that as women, if we do nothing as women, is that we lift each other up, that we tell each other stories of success, stories of failure, stories that define us, stories that strengthen us, because somebody is waiting to hear that story, whether it's and so one of the things I've done to make myself relevant to others and helpful to others is to mentor people, to have a mentor, to share stories, and to just as much as possible make my life a book that others can read and benefit from. And so I think if I want to leave us with anything tonight, is that it's very important that we know ourselves, that we share our stories, and that we live our lives, with each other, because we are just one big community. Thank you very much for having me here, and I hope I've encouraged someone somehow.
Thank you, Grace. You've definitely encouraged me. That was just, I don't know what to say. There was so much that spoke to me, and I just want to say you're definitely not an average person, Grace. You're extraordinary, and the words that you've spoken tonight has really inspired. So thank you very much for sharing. And I think this, I love your values, and you're amazing. Thank you very much. I would like to introduce our next speaker, which is Sabah Kaiser, is next to talk to us about displaced women. Sabah in her work has been working with people from minority groups, disadvantaged groups, and she's dedicated herself to helping and supporting those in challenging legal, emotional and healthcare situations. I'm sure Sabah has lots of stories to tell, and I'm sure she's going to inspire us just as much. So I'll give over to you now, Sabah.
Thank you very much. Before I go on to give my presentation, I just want to just speak out really to all the women who have come before me today to give their presentations. I have been absolutely mesmerized, and I'm in awe of everyone that has spoken today. As you guys were speaking, I wrote down a few words, and these words I dedicate to all the women that spoke just before me. And the words are: unusual, formal beauty and expressive power, arousing, enduring admiration. That's the thanks I give to all of you. So for today, thank you to DRI for inviting me to speak today on this very important day, International Women's Day. And also I want to say thank you to Mebrak for introducing me to today's forum. So Mebrak is a director of Vandu Interpreting and Translation Services, and I am honored completely and utterly to be represented as an interpreter by Vandu. I speak 8 languages and hold 26 qualifications in the area of ethnic minority issues, primarily issues facing women. But today I wanted to speak about another role that I hold, and that is as an ethnic minority ambassador to the National Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse. I have been authoring, we're just literally going to publication. I've authored a study that I have, it's a study that comes about after an 18-month engagement program, and that was speaking with ethnic minority victims and survivors of child sexual abuse in order to understand the barriers that they face when reporting or disclosing to authorities. So I've prepared a something that I'm going to read out to you guys, and I do apologize. I kind of felt like maybe the subject matter that I was going to bring up today is maybe a bit heavy, but I have to say, any opportunity that I get to speak at a platform, on a platform, I'm very passionate about this subject matter and raising awareness around this topic. So first of all, I'd like to give you some statistics, and these statistics are published by RAINN, R-A-I-N-N. You can get their full statistics from their website. every 9 minutes, Child Protective Services substantiates or finds evidence for a claim of child sexual abuse. Of all victims under 18, 2 out of 3 are ages 12 to 17. 1 in 9 girls and 1 in 53 boys under the age of 18 experience sexual abuse or assault at the hands of an adult. 82% of all victims under 18 are female. Females aged 16 to 19 are 4 times more likely than the general population to be victims of rape, attempted rape, or sexual assault. So to give you a bit of background about the National Inquiry, the National Inquiry into Childhood Sexual Abuse was set up when the media reported on some serious cases of child sexual abuse in institutions, media and in Westminster. The government was concerned that the very institutions charged with the care of the vulnerable in our society were failing to safeguard them from sexual exploitation and abuse. Through the inquiry, I have been as visible as I can be as an Asian woman survivor to give others in a similar situation the strength and confidence to take the Truth Project. The Truth Project gives survivors the opportunity to present their account of the abuse they suffered to the inquiry in a safe place and without redress. In February 2019, I accepted the role of Ethnic Minority Ambassador to the government's independent inquiry. It's also known as ICSA, IICSA, a position that takes me around the country engaging with stakeholders and survivors and speaking at events and conferences. Within my role, I act as a specialist consultant to the government inquiry in its remit to investigate institutional failures into child sexual abuse, specifically ensuring that its engagement is fully representative of all ethnicities and hears from and is accessible to all sections of our society. So the inquiry in my role, literally in February, as soon as I started, asked me the question. They said, the inquiry was set up by the government. As any large institutions go, organizations, they can be seen as white organizations for white people. So giving me the role of Ethnic Minority Ambassador, my aim was to show that the inquiry is committed. It has a huge appetite to make sure that its findings at the end of its investigation are representative. They do not homogenize all ethnic minority communities, that the recommendations they give are to keep all children safe, but also take into account the specific barriers that ethnic minority children face. So I embarked on an 18-month study, and what I'm going to present to you or read to you now is basically the governance, the thinking that I used behind, if you like, getting the go-ahead from the powers to be to carry out this really important study for the inquiry. So child sexual abuse and child sexual exploitation, so CSE, is increasingly recognized in the UK and internationally as a child protection and crime prevention priority. Yet, research and responses have focused heavily on CSE alone as an issue with BAME communities, leaving fundamental knowledge gaps around characteristics and needs of BAME victims and survivors affected by familial CSA, child sexual abuse. Our focused BAME engagement work forms part of a wider collaborative engagement program designed to improve the inquiry's understanding of and inform recommendations to government to the sexual abuse of BAME children within a familial setting, as well as CSE. Our focused engagement work represents a valuable, unobtrusive, and unusual contribution to an underdeveloped area. Our work covers a broad geographical reach, including the personal characteristics of service users and service providers alike. When identifying factors underlining attitudes towards and experience of child sexual abuse amongst BAME and their views on the actions or inactions of institutions, including the police, education, local authorities, and health services, calls for greater sensitivity to the subtleties with which participants use cultural values and norms to give meaning to their experience. Over the last decade, there have been considerable changes in how ethnicity is understood, engaging with cultural, religious, and ethnic diversity, while challenging stereotypes will enable the inquiry to raise meaningful recommendations within the context of providing a safe society for all in an increasingly multicultural and multi-super diverse society. We offer a deeper understanding at a grassroots level. Our engagement work will formulate an extensive report of these issues, barriers, experiences, and then by extension, provide the inquiry with key themes. Furthermore, these key themes will offer a backdrop for why institutions such as the police, social services, and schools have to date systematically failed BAME victims and survivors of child sexual abuse. There is an underreporting of child sexual abuse in Britain's BAME communities and a varied capacity amongst professionals to respond with cultural competence. Professional approaches originate in cultural contexts, which are often different from those of British BAME. Consultations with BAME reinforce the view that culturally competent practice and respectful dialogue are essential to the protection of children. So our work so far has highlighted recurring themes, which are frequently compounded by the impact of cultural imperatives arising from words such as izzat, which in English means honor and respect, haya, which means modesty in English, and sharam, shame and embarrassment. These are just a few, but the report gives a more detailed account of the barriers that we came across, with which a considerable influence on how many will behave when they are reporting or disclosing instances of child sexual abuse. Communities are the lifeblood of our remit, and this is why it is important that we engage effectively with all communities, and the inquiry understands this. There is a noticeable lack of statistics and published research on lesser heard voices. The lesser heard voices are our BAME children, the BAME experience of child sexual abuse. As predominantly BAME victims and survivors of child sexual abuse do not disclose to authorities. From the work we have completed thus far, we have learned that earlier mentioned themes such as shame, honor, and respect have functioned as barriers to reporting, that community leaders have functioned as gatekeepers of these communities, not dissimilar to how churches have treated sexual abuse of children in the past. Our engagement work is a program to drive the empowerment of ethnic minorities. Our study will be published on ICSA's website after the end of April 2021. And just to finish off, again, just a few words. My passion, my drive to do such work, and of course also to use any platform that I'm given the privilege to speak at, is to achieve sufficient prominence and to serve as a model for victims and survivors and others, and thus constitute something to call into question the conception of child sexual abuse, what Yeats would call the emotion of multitude. There is no sense of order for that child, and it's up to us as a society to put it right. That's my presentation, guys, and thank you very much for listening to this very kind of emotive topic, but I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabah. Breaks my heart to hear those statistics. It really does. I want to say thank you, not just for speaking tonight, but actually just a heartfelt thank you, I think, from everyone for the work that you do. You know, I think you're amazing. You're a guardian angel, and to, you know, protecting those kids and the vulnerable people, and you truly are an ambassador and an inspiration. Thank you very much for your contribution, and it was really passionate. I could tell in the way that you were speaking, so thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next part of our meeting today, which is the poetry and the contributions. So my first poet I'd like to introduce is AFLO. I've had the pleasure to hear AFLO perform in a previous meeting. She has an incredible passion and impact and the ability to take the listener on a journey with her words. Ania is influenced by hip hop from an early age, and her work takes a rhythmic flow while addressing hard-hitting topics such as racism, decolonization, trauma, and mental health. So welcome, Ania. Look forward to it, AFLO. Sorry.
Hello. No, thank you for having me. And happy International Women's Day to everyone. It's actually my poetry birthday today. So it's been 2 years since I performed my first poem alongside Priss Nash, who is also in the room, and you'll get to hear them later. They are incredible. But I thought I would share the first poem that I wrote and performed on that day 2 years ago, and it's called Crazy Woman of Colour. I think as women, we are so much more than just women. We are intersectional beings, and I think it can be really difficult to be understood when those intersections overlap. So this poem is my experience of that. Trigger warnings ahead for mentions of self-harm, mental health, borderline personality disorder, drug abuse, prescription medication, sexual assault. But if you can hang in there, it gets better, and there's light at the end of the tunnel, which is why I'm here. But yeah, this is Crazy Woman of Colour. I am a crazy woman of colour. Now, that's a phrase that might smell off. It might burn your tongue. Does it feel uncomfortable in your mouth? Well, it can feel uncomfortable in my skin and in my mind pretty much all the damn time. I am a crazy woman of colour who has sliced and has slit just to feel the warm drops and drips of what flows within me, to remind me I am still present, bleeding and breathing, bleeding and breathing, bleeding and breathing, bleeding and breathing. That is the rhythm of a borderline's existence. Borderline, you say? What do you mean borderline? On the borderline of sanity or bordering on too far gone? Professionals stood on the borderline deciding whether or not they're going to help me. That is my experience of being borderline. I am a crazy woman of colour, and services seem to just medicate us all. Meds up to the eyeballs, and if you don't take them, then they won't take you. Seriously. I mean, seriously, can someone please tell me why I need to keep swallowing antipsychotics to be deserving of therapy? Can someone please tell me why I can't have the treatment that I was told will treat me best because I didn't win the postcode lottery? I beg you tell me how meds will help me process my childhood trauma, or the intergenerational trauma, or the trauma that simply comes with the territory of belonging to the African diaspora. So I am a crazy woman of colour, and I can tell you what medicine I need. My prescription says all I need is to be heard. Just let me speak and really listen. It's when I speak about my mind, I speak passionately, but when I speak passionately, I am rarely heard, because when I speak passionately, I get called aggressive, and professionals cut me off or turf me out like, don't raise your voice, don't speak to me like that. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to ask to end the appointment here because you're being quite intimidating. 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 Oh, you mean you can tell I'm not quite all white, so my tone is intimidating. Maybe the tone of my voice, maybe the tone of my skin, but the totality of my tone frightens them. So even though I'm light, all right, they see the darkness in me and they back down. Lights out, blackout, and services bow out, because I am a crazy woman of colour. I am a crazy woman of colour who grew tired waiting for a suited white saviour with a medical degree, who could never bother to truly understand me. Instead, I used to wipe my tears and blow up my nose. Charles and Amanda, ready with the tissues, you know, bag me up and bring me up, then get tossed to the curb, just in time for the cold light of day. Grazed but unfazed, eyes glazed, eyes crazed, eyes like saucers, the morning routine. I peel myself off the pavement, off the floor, off the mattress of an undesirable, dust off the shame, and do it again and again and again and again, and the next night and the next night and the next night and the next night. And if I keep buzzing, I won't have to face it, right? Wrong. The batteries die if you keep buzzing too long. I am a crazy woman of colour. The blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice, but some white tongues can't handle the flavour. They can't handle this fruit, but I look a little less spicy, I guess. So I make a great tester, I guess, and boy, did the boys test me. I've never been with a brown girl before, from the lips of white boys, brown boys and black boys too. And note, I say boys, not men, because they are boys, not men. Some clearly set a target and tried to pursue, was like easy, or just an easy target. I wish I knew, I wish I'd known better, but when your first sexual experiences are without your consent, how do you learn where to draw the line? Where do you learn to say no? When do you learn you can say no? Those boys took pieces of me each time. I was already broken, but they made me feel missing. I'm a crazy woman of colour, and I've lost myself before. I've lost my mind countless times, but I think I'm learning. I think I'm learning not to not lose it, but to see the silver lining. Like in the depths of my depression when I haven't bathed in days and I can smell myself. I smell like pain. I smell like numb. I smell like fear. No, I smell like bravery. I smell like strength. I smell like absolute resilience because I am still here. I may still be in bed, but I am still breathing. You know, I'm crazy about being a crazy woman of colour. I'm strong like Nina and crazy like Miss Simone. I get high off my highs and recharge on my lows. And yeah, it swings and roundabouts, but that's just how my rhythm goes. You know the phrase, you can't appreciate the sunshine without a little rain? Well, if I can go to bed satisfied at the end of a bad day, it's because of all the pain. Feeling fine feels amazing and average is bliss. I am so more than okay with being okay. And despite the dark times, I am thankful for this. So yeah, I'm crazy about being a crazy woman of colour. Being a brown girl isn't the easiest identity, but oh, are we beautiful. And beauty and colour are more than skin deep. A culture and history so rich and diverse. I am the descendant of Nubian queens and the descendant of those who survived the journeys across the seas, shackled to the bottoms of boats. And though it ain't easy, what with racism, sexism, misogyny, misogynoir, white supremacy, white feminism, high rates of psychosis within the community, ghettoization, gentrification, the harmful picture of a strong, independent black woman who don't need no man, microaggressions, cultural appropriation and culture vultures like the Kardashians. Black women are unbeatable. So yeah, I'm crazy about being a crazy woman of colour because it makes me who I am. I am sensitive, I am strong, I am wise, and I've been wrong to ever think I am anything less than worthy. To ever let anyone treat me as anything less than worthy, because now I know I am a hell of a lot more than worthy. I am kind, I am tender, I'm creative, I'm empathetic, I'm intelligent, I'm appreciative, I'm resilient, and I am absolutely crazy about being a crazy woman of colour. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you.
Thank you, AFLO. I'm a crazy woman too. I want to be a crazy woman. There's nothing wrong with crazy. Crazy is passionate. I think my kids and my husband will say I'm definitely a crazy woman of colour, and I'm proud of it too. Thank you. I really enjoyed that. I'm sure everybody enjoyed that. But I'd like to introduce Seema Kapila next. She's a singer-songwriter, a poet and a short story writer, and she fronts a 4-piece eclectic indie band. Seema has made her career in community development, specializing in single homelessness. She's currently working on the band's debut album. Seema, I'm not sure if you're going to sing for us, but if you can, I'd like to know what your next album is called, if you're allowed to reveal.
Oh, well, thank you anyway for introducing me. Can you see me?
We can see you.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Well, I haven't decided the title of the album. I've got a few in mind, so I shall kind of mull them over as the process happens for completion. So I've got 2 or 3 in mind. Oh. Well, thank you for inviting me to this event. I feel very honoured. I also want to thank Mebrak for, and her team for organising all this. So, thank you very much. And thank you to all the other speakers that have come before me. I mean, just listening to the sort of honesty and empowering words and thoughts and issues, is thought-provoking and makes you realize how complicated people's lives are, and unless we share this, people don't really know and don't really understand. So thanking everyone for that. Today I'm going to share a couple of songs with you. As your lovely introduction of me explained, is that I've had a long career in community development. So just watching ideas thrive, the challenges that are needed in that. But music has been something that's always been part of my life, whether it's my, listening to my mum singing in the kitchen. My brother used to be a big music collector, and music and stories and sharing that and just listening to tales is something that's always been part of my growing up. I also do poetry and short stories, but music for me is a way of kind of communicating a lot of issues that we have within ourselves and outside of ourselves in terms of what we have to face or the challenge we have. I'd like to sing 2 songs. The first one is, I wrote it actually in this pandemic. I wasn't planning to write anything. I had to put my album work on the, just had to slow it down because we couldn't carry it on in the pandemic. And this song came into my head. I've titled it In Better Soil. And really it's about growing from a difficult situation that we're all going through into something better, in better soil. I had started working in the garden. I was going for walks on the downs, and it was really a sense of rejuvenation from this situation that we have all found ourselves. And the song is applicable to anywhere where there has been trauma, and then you are trying to heal that. And the song In Better Soil is about that. The first verse actually talks about a lady, and it's kind of my wise lady in the song saying her view that we can grow things back in better soil. Shall I give it a go and sing it to you? It will be a pleasure to share it with everyone. Thank you. I walked up the hill, met a lady standing still. She was gazing across the open field. When I asked her how she was, she said growing somber by the day, but we'll get through this some bright sunny day. Oh, the winds will change, the winds will fall, and we'll grow our country in better soil. Oh, the winds will change, oh, the winds will fall, and we'll grow our country in better soil, in better soil. I followed her behind, keeping my distance in mind. She just faded across the open fields. When I wondered where she'd gone, I heard a whispering song, and a bird took flight across the sky. Oh, the winds will change, oh, the winds will fall, and we'll grow our country in better soil. Oh, the winds will change, the winds will fall, and we'll grow our country in better soil, in better soil. And I know the time will come, we'll stroll arm in arm and kiss the air, the sweet summer fair, mourn the loss and look towards the dawn. Oh, the winds will change, oh, the winds will fall, and we'll grow our country in better soil. Oh, the winds will change, oh, the winds will fall, and we'll grow our country in better soil. Oh, the winds will change, oh, the winds will fall, and we'll grow our country in better soil. Oh, the winds will change. Well, I hope, oh, thank you for the clap there. I hope you like that. But it's just about, you know, taking something that has been a trauma and rejuvenating it. My band is called the Seema Tree, and I really do believe in sort of the standing strong, standing powerful, and you know, and the challenge of that, trying to be that. On the album, the debut album, there's a range of songs that kind of reflect being strong and being proud of who you are. There's songs on there about feeling very fragile. There's a song called China Doll about being fragile. So it's a big range. There's love lost and things like that. But, you know, reflecting on my upbringing, you know, I'm a Indian heritage, born in East Africa, and then came here in the early 1970s. So it's a migrant family, all the issues that you would find, internal issues, external issues. So, you know, the album for me reflects that. And, you know, I'm at the ripe old age of 55 doing a debut album, but it just shows you that, you know, people, the challenges women feel, all the ways that we are pulled to really become ourselves. And it's a real pleasure for me now to be focusing on my music and to be able to communicate with people and share. And when I sing these songs out, people come and they say, well, actually, yeah, you know, that relates to me. And that, the joy of that, being able to connect through either spoken word or poetry or singing, is an absolute joy. And the more, I think someone already, one of the speakers said about sharing stories, is that it so enriches everyone, because we can then start relating to each other. So the power of music and spoken word is incredible. If I have got time, I would like to do another song. And this one is going to be on the debut album. It's called Leap in the Dark. And this one is about leaping into the unknown, where all your fears are, all your challenges are, and trying to be strong about that. So it's called Leap in the Dark. There's an old saying, I know it well. When heaven and earth are dead, fight if there be hell, and the devil will be watching your every move, waiting for the day when you lose your cool. I sat with my fears for a week or two, brought up from a pit stop night spent with you. You talk such gibberish when you get drunk, but in the midst of it all, a gem in the jar. So hold on, hold on. Great doubt brings great faith, but what a leap in the dark for you. Hold on, hold on. Great doubt brings great faith, but what a leap in the dark for you. Monkey mind, have a little rest. I've touched your ways, though I look for the twist. You cast a big shadow, though you're mighty small. My happy freedom now is being absorbed. So hold on, hold on. Great doubt brings great faith, but what a leap in the dark for you. Hold on, hold on. Great doubt brings great faith, but what a leap in the dark for you. Hold on, hold on. Great doubt brings great faith, but what a leap in the dark for you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And, you know, I wish all the best for the rest of the event. The debut album, we're getting hopefully back onto it. Obviously, progress has been, you know, slowed down. But, you know, as I said, my music reflects all the kind of experiences I've had, and it's been lovely to share that with you. And I look forward to listening to all the rest. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Seema. All that was, I was having visions of sitting outside by the fire with a glass of wine while you're sitting there entertaining with your guitar. It was beautiful. I'll bring the people and the fire and the wine if you come.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce a very honoured guest next, and it's Jane Sutherland. She's an author of 4 poetry collections, the most recent one, Home Farm, and it's available as Shearman's Books. I believe it was published in 2019, and I also believe that Jane's working on her 5th. So Jane was born in Wiltshire and grew up on a dairy farm. Her poems are widely anthologized, so I was hoping I wasn't going to make a mistake with that one, and published in magazines such as Poetry Ireland Review, New Statements, and The Spectator. But we welcome you, Jane, and I'll hand over to you now.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks very much. It's so lovely to be here with everyone celebrating International Women's Day. And I feel very privileged to have listened this evening to the testimony of everyone who's spoken, and Seema's songs and the poetry. And I'm going to read 4 fairly short poems. So I'm going to start with one which is called Blue Abrasions. It's after a poem. It's after a poem called The Rooms of Other Women Poets by Evan Boland, in which she uses the phrase, the blue abrasions of daylight. Blue abrasions. The blue abrasions of daylight from Evan Boland, The Rooms of Other Women Poets. What is it about these blue abrasions of light falling as dusk across the page? Are they shared now with other poets in other rooms? You will have us reach for light, lean over your shoulder to touch dusk in another place, as if it was sand wearing an alternative skin. Reaching for language abrades the fingertips lightly like braille. You could run your fingers over the page and find that ache of things ending. There is grace in November's passing. The hill I can see from my window rebones itself, its arc backlit. Racks and scuds of cloud follow rain, and dusk comes early. Somewhere you are writing and have marked the unbearable permanence of stone, how its curve catches the breath, its folds darken and include you. Outside, leaves are falling. The beach is unadorned and plain. And the second poem is called If. I've got a very strong memory of my mother mending a book for me when I was very young, maybe just 3 or 4. And it seemed to me then the most magical thing that she was able to mend it, to put the words in the right order again, and then to read the whole book to me. So this is called If. If a book is broken, your mother can mend it using broad tape that feels like cotton. She can place her hand on yours and put the torn edges together, can feather them in till the rough white patches bind and the letters join. If a book is broken, your mother can find out which is the last page and which is the first, and she can put the last page back in the right place. If a book is broken, your mother can fix it. And then the next poem is called To the Nightjar, and it's an odd little poem, and it's dedicated to a woman called Mebrak Ghebreweldi, who lived in Southwold in Suffolk around 1548. And when her husband died, he left her some of his goods, but only on the condition that she would pay a priest to pray for his soul in Rome, and another priest to sing for his soul in Southwold Church. And so I wondered who would pray for Mebrak Ghebreweldi's soul. And the nightjar is a bird that only sings at night. To the Nightjar. In memoriam Mebrak Ghebreweldi, Southwold, around about 1548. Her William in his will. Item, I will have a priest to Rome to sing for me the space of 1 whole year, and I will that the said priest have for his labour 14 pounds. At dusk, in a gorse grey common, a handkerchief held up will call the nightjar to his song. A rising platter chirr, a soft cooick, uneven wing claps, like an audience of one unsettled by a play as the curtain falls. Corpse fowl, puckerage, flying toad, fern owl, nighthawk, moth owl, doorhawk, churn owl, eve jar, wheelbird, gnat hawk, night swallow, nightjar, nightjar, nightjar. Item. I give to my said wife one of my 2 ships, the Cecily or the Andrew, and I will that Margaret, my wife, shall have my place called Skillman's, with all the lands, tenements, rents and services, upon condition that the said Margaret shall find a secular priest to sing in the church of Southwold during her life aforesaid for my soul. In the broad space between day and night, and out of the half-seen woods, who sings for the soul of Margaret Goddell? I, said the nightjar, with my jarring rattles, wing claps. I sing for Margaret, unpaid plain song, for her room in heaven. And I'm going to finish with a poem called Nearer, and I wrote this as a love sonnet to my wife. We're just about to celebrate 30 years together. And so this is me arriving home on the train, walking up Station Street in Lewes and going home. Nearer. Rain is falling under sodium lights. The municipal toilet roof is bathed in gold. Up Station Street, the tarmac shines, and little rivers writhe and coil along the roadside gutters. It's late. The traffic light in broken pieces scatters across the deserted lane in amber, red, red and amber, green. In all the houses, darkness slowly deepens. In this town, on a night like this, my heart glitters. Each footfall takes me nearer to your bed and to the dark where I will lie with you this little time. I thought it could not be like this, but I was wrong, walking on light and water, coming home.
Oh, thank you, Janet. Thank you very much. I think the one thing that stood out for me with all the speakers and the poetry in particular is that we get a glimpse of who the people are when they read their poems, you know, and what they represent and what the things that they love. And it makes me feel like I'm getting to know you when I hear all the poetry and the things that have been shared tonight. And I feel like I've been on a roller coaster. I've been happy and sad and passionate and, you know, and yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. I particularly liked the one you said about if a book is broken, your mother can fix it. And yeah, mothers can fix anything with a bit of spit and love. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker, or our next poet, a poetry contribution, and it's from Priss Nash. And I would just like to say that if you can hold on a little bit longer, I know we were supposed to finish at 8, but we have some amazing couple of performances coming up. We've got a dance performance coming up very shortly, and 2 poetry readings. So if you can hold on a little bit, I'm sure it will be well worth it. So I'd like to introduce Priss Nash. Priss calls herself as uncensored, unfiltered, unapologetic and oversharing. And that's how she refers to herself on social media. And I just love that. She's a Brighton-based poet, spoken word artist, telling her stories through verses and bars and pars. And she says, she quotes, "This year more than ever, Black folks have needed space and an outlet for our pain, our anger, joy, creativity, and all the words we're often silenced from saying." I love your passion, Priss. So over to you.
Thank you. That is down to me being a fire sign. So this poem that I'm going to do first, I wrote it literally around this time last year. Today's also my poetry anniversary. Me and AFLO have the same one. We were at the same gig doing our poetry together. It's very cute. So yeah, I wrote this poem a year ago, and it's just sort of like self-acceptance / a self-assessment, and just sort of looking all your patterns in the face and realizing some things need to change. So this poem is called Becoming Overcoming. I forgot how I need to thank myself for carrying myself. My body that kept me so safe, I owed an apology. I've learned that I need to love myself enough for 6 people and stop waiting for a seat at the table. Like forming defense in battle, I shielded myself from anyone who tried to get close. It wasn't till they withdrew I realized the strategy hurt me the most. Antisocial and alone. Too many years were spent drinking from the fountain of self-sabotage. How can I expect to heal when I've been filling myself with such poison and poured salt on my scars? I've decided now is the time to quiet my mind, unlearn the habits that led to my demise, take note from observation, assimilate conversation, and learn how to compromise. Only then, like Maya, will I rise. I used to think my biggest fear was being alone, and how fragile was the ego residing in me. Years go by, I realize it's who I become when I forget to love myself, and I remind myself to practice unapologetically. Give myself permission to embrace the waves of whatever washes over me. Everything I feel is valid. I am strong. I am seen. So that's my first one. And then the second one is probably one of my favorite poems that I've ever written. I wrote it last summer. It took me a long time to write it because it's very personal. But I wrote this poem about and for Black women because I feel like we are purposely misunderstood, purposely misinterpreted, just deemed as angry all the time and intimidating all the time. And I feel like a lot of people lack the desire to fully understand Black women and everything we go through and everything that we carry and everything that's projected onto us. And I just want all Black women everywhere to be understood. So yeah, I wrote this poem. It's called Black Woman. And yeah, I hope it resonates with you guys. Why do you think we're angry? Black women are hurting. Our problems, demands, and healthcare they're deserting, 5 times more likely to die when birthing. What took you so long to finally start unearthing the pain of misogyny while we've been enduring, while we suffer and wait for you to start unlearning the deep-seated patterns you scattered the earth in? We're demanding respect and we're more than deserving. Black women deserve love without sacrifice, deserve to still breathe when they fail to signal at a traffic light, can present themselves as female without having to defend the right to sleep in their homes without being murdered by the police at night. Should be believed when we report abuse the first time. Instead, we fear of going missing, see our bodies in the headline, dying from saliva droplets of a hate crime, them closing the case thinking that no justice is justified, searching for change 25 years down the line when our daughters die from 13-foot tape around her face and eyes. Give us protection, we're way past the deadline. It's not a debate, Black women are worthy and should stay alive. It's always been Black women at the forefront of the movement, portrayed as teachers and martyrs, but seldom treated human, exhorting us to soften our voices when we're bringing the news in. We do not have time to sweet talk you through the revolution. Why is it such a statement when we dare to be beautiful? Why is everyone so hell-bent on telling us to be humble? When we love ourselves out loud, it's a dreadful offense, like the only way we exist is in martyrdom or the bottom of your nightmares. Subjected to hearing words like bitter and burnt to describe our features, as young as being in the playground, we're demonized as these creatures who are programmed to endure masses of hate, disrespect, and cold stares, immediately deemed as undesirable if we don't have 3B hair. Compelled to encounter the backhanded compliments sprinkled with racism and presented as pearls. You're really pretty for a Black girl. Admire us with your chest or keep it moving and mind your business. Don't say that you're attracted to one and think the rest of us are worthless. Respect all Black women, not just the ones you're attracted to, because the darker the berry, the sweeter the juice. Don't comment how Don't comment on how I love myself when I've had to overcome and tolerate years of abuse. You don't know what I've been through. And for my sisters who aren't cisgender, you're more than valid too. It's not your fault this ugly world can't see the beauty in you. For it was our own ancestors who bent the rules of gender before the binary became colonized, spread far and wide through West African tribes, focused on energy, not anatomy, inhabiting twin souls, symbolizing androgyny, blurring the lines in ways which made us feel free, rejoicing in times before the world felt so entitled to our bodies. Why does every way we present ourselves have to be policed? Why is the dehumanization of Castus and Menya seen as necessary as she's denied the chances to compete? What is it about Black women that makes the world want to drown us in trans misogyny? How is it fair that we're constantly told to dim our lights so that others can succeed? We're so tired of hardening the parts of ourselves that make us complete. Black women should be able to live without apology. Can you imagine how much a Black woman hurts? Being stripped bare and robbed of the riches we deserved, chastised when we show emotion while we're being burned, gaslit into oblivion, yet assemble the strength to return. What is it about us that makes the world think we're invincible? I admit our constant resilience is admirable, yet it's nothing but a survival tactic in a world to make us feel small. Do you really believe we have no feelings at all? What drives you to beat us down so relentlessly? Smile in our faces while lying through the teeth, push us down in the dirt in attempts to force our defeat, but disclaimer, we are one with the earth. In the words of the old proverb in Ibeyi, they tried to bury us, but they didn't know that we were seeds. Little do you know that we have a sixth and seventh sense. The sixth is being discernment, the latter is being heaven sent. We can immediately tell when your gestures aren't genuine, so don't hold us hostage if we're not always welcoming. There is so much trauma that comes with the melanin. We're protecting ourselves from the mistreatment of our skin. We are the epitome of divine feminine, and that energy is not always delicate. We prepare to see Black women in all the forms that we're existing in, striking, sensual, and not always palatable. We've been censoring ourselves for centuries. Nursing the children of our masters while creating herbal remedies, we are the monarchs of multitasking. Try to drown us in your spite, but I promise we will be dancing, for our magic is real and our excellence is everlasting. We grow gardens of ourselves every day in a world that literally spits in our faces. We are landscapes of love in its purest form. Sorrow may endure for our lives, but we find solace in the joy that comes in the morn as we mourn the versions of ourselves that had to die in order for us to survive, for the sisters that we lose every day due to hate crimes. And yes, we are strong Black women, but sometimes we just want to be alive Black women. We are constantly breaking our backs from holding the world up, but who's making space for us? Can we rest? We are tired Black women. Strong is a synonym for exhausted Black women. Everyone's quick to deem us as angry, but we're just depressed Black women. We're purposely misunderstood Black women. I didn't stutter when I said take a long, hard look at the anti-Blackness that resides within, because we're not always well received in your workplaces and buildings. We're lacking protection. Look at Brianna and Toy, and we're asking for compassion and emotional reparations. Black women are worth so much more than your fetishizations. We are worth opportunities where we shine and equal payment. We carry so much on top of our worldly frustrations. And how divine will be the day when we walk in liberation, dripping in gold and salvation, being rewarded our accolades without hesitation. We are not a monolith, but we are a nation of unchained, unconfined, powerful Black women. Thank you very much.
Wow, Priss. Wow, it's all I can say. I think there's been lots of clapping. Just so powerful. Black women should be able to live without apology. I love it. I loved your performance. Thank you very much. All of it tonight has been absolutely, it's blown me away, and I'm just I don't want this to end. I would like to introduce, on that tone, I'd like to introduce Lucy Alphonso. She's going to do a dance performance for us, and I know Lucy's agreed to do this in the last minute, so I feel like I'm doing her a disjustice by not introducing her properly, but all I know about Lucy is she's an amazing dancer. So I'm going to leave it up to you to introduce yourself, Lucy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ah, there we are. Can everyone see Lucy?
No.
Hold on a minute, just a minute. I'm going to, here we go.
Hi, everyone. I've just adjusted myself so that you'll be able to see me when I'm dancing. Hi, I'm Lucy Alphonso. And I'm not a brilliant dancer like I have been introduced to you as. However, yes, dancing is my passion, and what I generally do is I run dance and exercise classes, but I do performances not on big scale. Yes, but presently we are doing the multicultural women's group. That's on a Thursday. We all meet together by Zoom, and we do an hour of dancing. I've been doing it since 2013. So feel free when I'm dancing now to join in. You know, from wherever you are, it's not going to be difficult for you to join me. So I'm going to start, and please, like I said, feel free to join in. I'll try and do it a bit slow, like the way we run the dance class on a Thursday. And if you all are free on a Thursday, get in touch with the Multicultural Women's Group and join us. Even if you don't fancy dancing, the music is really vibrant and it's very nice for uplifting us at this time when so many of us are feeling a bit low. All right then.
केड़ा पिंड शहर तेरा तू मैनू दस सोहणीए ओ लगदी लाहौर दिया जिस हिसाब ना हस दिया ओ लगदी पंजाब दिया जिस हिसाब ना तक दिया ओ लगदी लाहौर दिया जिस हिसाब ना हस दिया कुड़ी दा पता करो केड़े पिंड दिया केड़े शहर दिया ओ लगदी लाहौर दिया जिस हिसाब ना हस दिया जिस हिसाब ना तक दिया दिल्ली दा नखराया साथ उड़ा नखराया मुंडिया नू पागल कर दिया जिस हिसाब ना चल दिया ओ लगदी लाहौर दिया जिस हिसाब ना हस दिया कुड़ी दा पता करो पता करो पता करो कातिल अदावा तो बचना मैं चाहवा पर बच भी ना पावा की करा सकदार में दिल मचदार में पर बोल भी ना पावा की करा दिल्ली का नखराया स्टाइल मेरा बखराया इम्प्रेस न करती है मैंने तेरी बात सुनी है लख कोशिश कर ले पर मैं ना सेट होनी है तेरे बस की ना मैं हूँ बाकी कहने को तो चल बस छोड़िए अखियां ना गोली मार दिया अंदरों प्यार भी कर दिया वो लगती लाहौर दिया जिस हिसाब ना हंस दिया वो लगती पंजाब दिया जिस हिसाब ना तक दिया कुड़ी दा पता करो पता करो पता करो पता करो पता करो
Would anybody like to join me?
Thank you so much, Lucy. That was fabulous.
Yes,
I was putting on the chat, everybody to join in to finish
Yes.
with. So thank you very much for that.
Okay.
Thank you. Last minute arrangements. Thank you, Lucy. Lucy's a teacher who provides us lessons on Thursdays, as she said. So if anybody wants to join, it's free. It's via Zoom. Do get in touch with me or do get in touch with DRI and they can forward you my contact details and we can go from there. It's Thursdays, 6 o'clock till 7.
Thank you.
Lucy, thank you very much. That looked really fun. You said you weren't a good dancer. I mean, you know, you've got your arms and legs moving at different speeds. In my books, that's a good dancer. So we all really enjoyed that. Thank you very much. That really does look like good fun. So it'd be nice.
Yes, it's good fun. It's good fun. Join in if you're free. Thank you.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Finally, we have a last poetry performance from Ania Sawko. I hope I've said your name right. Last but not least, she's a biology student at Sussex University and she's passionate about climate activism and using creativity as a vessel for expression. Ania loves to paint, she writes music, and she's currently making tops from discarded materials to try and minimize contributions to fast fashion. I'm very intrigued, Ania. That sounds amazing. Welcome, and over to you.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, I just want to say this has been absolutely beautiful Zoom. What everyone's contributed has been amazing. And also I'm really nervous. I'm sorry if that comes across, but yeah, and I thought, well, I haven't performed any poetry before, so this is my first one. Yeah, I just have like a fear of performance and stuff, and it's interesting when I thought about where it stemmed from, and it was mostly from like school and stuff and like speaking up about things and then being put down. And unfortunately, it was like a lot of men put me down for talking about certain issues and stuff. So I thought I'd just challenge myself with performing for the first time since then. But yeah, so my poem covers topics such as like unfair pay and just, yeah, I'll just jump into it. But yeah, I'd like to speak as there's not enough said. I sometimes voice things, but I'm ignored instead. Or a voice rises up in a sky of grey. The clouds will cover her up. Quick, let's avoid any disturbance today. But she is a woman who is fighting. She is a woman who all her life must remain mighty. But isn't the fight done from before? Why can't we move on and close the door? How can we stay silent at a slammed in our face door, while other women are not free to even go to school by the law? When some speak up and are categorized as crazy, and to some our purpose is labeled simply as babies. We must refuse to stay silent when my sisters are hurting, and in seeing a chain of dominoes deserting. The fight isn't over until we're all free, and this drips into every category. 75 million creating our clothes in the clothing industry, 80% women using their intelligence to make what many cannot do, slip beneath a carpet paid by ones and twos. Next, a £1 sale on Pretty Little Thing. In engaging, we're enabling and undermining. Until all women are free to be, we are not. And until then, we should never stop. Our voices are powerful and our minds intelligent. We are incredible women who must lift each other up. I'll bear weight on my shoulders, so we'll all take the ladder up. Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Ania, you're a natural. That was beautiful. I mean, really, don't listen to the boys. You're made for this. Definitely. I'm so happy that you came along and read your poetry, especially on today, on International Women's Day. I think that was just beautiful. And don't listen to anybody, you know, put your voice out there. That's amazing. Thank you very much. Well, I think that's brought us to the end of our performances. So I'd like to sort of just open it up to everyone who would like to say something. If you can just unmute yourself if you'd like to contribute or say anything tonight, that would be great. Yeah, we'd love to hear from anybody else. No? Okay.
I'd just like to, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
I'd just like to say how empowered and moved and, you know, educated and inspired everything I was this evening by listening to everyone. And I want to thank Mebrak again and all the organizers involved in presenting this beautiful occasion, and Zelma for her moving and beautiful tribute to me, and to all the people who've contributed. It's been so inspiring listening, and to the poets coming through, to Janet and the younger poets. I wish you, you know, that you'd grow from strength to strength and that you'd continue to be inspired by the word and to be committed to language. So I look forward to hearing more from you. And just to say thanks again to everyone. I have to now go because I have to do a few things, but thank you so much, everyone, for this evening. And to you, the chairperson, I don't see your name underneath it.
My name is Rozelle.
Yes. Oh yes, Rozelle. I'm sorry, Rozelle.
Thank you, Grace.
So much for handling it so beautifully.
Oh, thank you. I think you've just put the cherry on a cake. You finished it off perfectly. I couldn't have said it any better. Thank you to all our speakers. For me personally, I really, really enjoyed tonight. I've enjoyed all the poetry contributions. I've enjoyed the dance. I've enjoyed the speakers. I feel like, you know, I just really, really appreciate it. So thank you very much. And I'd like to say, enjoy the rest of the day. And thank you for joining. And yeah, hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us from DRI, Mamta, Dr. Ya, myself, and all the associate directors, I would want to say thank you so much. Keep in touch with DRI. Let's make the change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.